So fellow Toastmasters, with his speech Go Anywhere, will you please welcome George Randall. George Randall, Go Anywhere.
If I was to tell you there's one thing above all else that will ensure you have an auspicious life, what do you think it would be? Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, think of yourself, don't think about it. What do you think that would be? Well, I consider myself fairly auspicious. So what is it? Is it money? I don't think so. Is it good looks? Let's not go there. Is it good health? Well, yeah, I've had my ups and downs. But as a very intelligent man, much more intelligent than me, Albert Einstein said that with logic, you can go from A to B. But with imagination, you can go anywhere. Have you used your imagination? Where did you imagine yourself going? Logic often gets in the way. Have you allowed logic to get in the way of your imagination? Perhaps, perhaps not. I can remember at school, at high school, went to the music class for the first time, and the music teacher said, "Put your hands up if you have a violin at home." I enthusiastically put up my hand, and so did about half a dozen others. It must have been an in thing in those days. And the teacher said, "Well, I can help you learn how to play the violin." Well, I immediately imagined myself in a concert hall. This would be wonderful. I rushed home to tell Mum and Dad. I said to Mum, "Mum, I'm going to learn how to play the violin." "You'll have to talk to your father," she said. Dad came home. "Dad, I'm going to learn how to play the violin." Now, my dad was a bit of a perfectionist. He was very much a perfectionist. And he had learned to play the violin when he was young. And he thought, "Oh, I'm sure his imagination was running wild." And he said, "George, no. No. Logic had got in the way." You see, it was logical. I had a violin, I could learn to play the violin. But his imagination started to run. And he remembered what it was like when he was learning the violin. And he just couldn't stand the thought of it. Now, as it turned out, my next door neighbour, both the boys there, learned to play the violin, so he had a problem anyway. But my imagination was tossed. I was not able to play the violin. Just actually completely decimated by logic. Then as things progressed, I was in a house that was really full of logic, particularly Dad. Now, Renee was telling us about filing. Well, I ended up doing an engineering course. And it was logic. If you weren't that good at school, and I certainly wasn't that good at school, you moved on to a tradesman, to be a tradesman. And I went through as a fitter turner, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I'll explain later how you can manage to get that far, because I've spent days doing it as well. But as I progressed in the shop floor, I had this vision of people standing at the door as we were paid, and people would shuffle out and they would hand them money. And these were money lenders. These were people who would be on an early rate, they would get their pay, and before they even left the factory, a large chunk of that pay was given back to the money lender. And that money lender would charge a very high rate of interest. So my imagination started to imagine me out of this situation. And to cut a long story short, I finished my working career in a corporate role. So it's possible to go anywhere, figuratively. Now, at the same time, I had an imagination of being financially independent. And I'm pleased to say that I was able to retire at 55. Just a couple of years ago, I wish. So the thing is that when you have that imagination and you don't let logic get in the way, you can go anywhere. So what does your imagination say to you now? I would like you to leave tonight and use your imagination in a way that you have never used it before. Think about where you want to be, where you could have been if you hadn't allowed your past imaginations to be destroyed by logic. There's many things you can do. So that's the not so good side of things. Another thing that I did was imagine being in Australia. My brother had come here, and he said, why didn't you come over? What's that going to be like? And I'm fortunate. I met a nice girl, and I imagined spending the rest of my life with her. And at 38 years, yeah, so far so good. And she's got a wonderful imagination. She tells me all the time. And I have to agree with her. So it's back to what you think you can do and where you can go with your imagination. As Albert Einstein said, logic will take you from A to B. The imagination, with that, you can go anywhere.